All right, all right. It's time again for Drummer Nation Live, the show for and about drummers, where we talk drums, drummers, and drumming, and all things related therein. My esteemed co-host and partner in crime is Adam Nussbaum. Adam is touring this week. He's overseas in Europe somewhere for a week, doing his gigging thing that he does so well, and we wish him safe travels, and we'll be back again next week. We're planning on starting a new series that's pretty cool that Adam and I are going to do together, and it'll run for a while, and I can tell you what it is, but, I'd have to kill you. I don't want to do that, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to have a sip of water. The reason I use two hands is because I have a lot of electronics right under here, right under there, and if I don't do that, I'm afraid that I will spill a whole glass of water into something expensive. So I don't want to do that. All right, so this is an unusual show in that I'm going to present a portion of a show I did a few years ago. There's the making of the show, and there's the distribution of the show. And if you screw that up, this show got seen by like 50 people. I don't remember what I did wrong at the time, but it was a throwaway, actually. And it's on drum set reading, and I decided it held together pretty well. I'll go back and repost this, refresh it, and introduce it live, do the ins and outs live. So I can cut to the chase and give you the spoiler. The answer to whether or not it's important to be a drum set reader or a good drum set reader is maybe. Depends on what you want to do with your life and what kind of gigs you want to play. And I don't know how that's changing now. Maybe it's more important, maybe it's less, depending on what you want to do. So without further ado, I'm going to put a couple of quick spots in here. Don't run away. These things are 15 seconds, man. And the sponsors sure appreciate them. Here we go.
The stories that go on, I mean, if these walls could talk, holy mackerel, we'd all go to jail.
New from Bobworks, it's the Stick Station. Stick Station attaches easily to any rim and makes quick work of changing from sticks to brushes. Stick Station is available at bobworks.net and from fine percussion retailers. All right, who was that guy? I do voiceover. What I do is I barter cross-posting privileges so that this show you're seeing goes out to, 15 Facebook pages at least. More than that, I think. And for that, I give them mentions on the show. And if they have the materials presented to present, I'll usually take a 5-minute video and reduce it for them, 15 and 30-second spots that they approve because it's their stuff in the first place. I didn't shoot anything. Sometimes I had a voiceover, but it's all copy and text from their marketing materials. So if you want to play that game with me, let me know. Just PM me and see about cross-posting to your page. It only cross-posts the live shows, which are less than once a week, usually twice a month or so. And it helps everybody, We all, rising tide lifts all ships, as they say. Anyway, I'm going to show you a pre-recorded segment on drum set reading I did a few years back that nobody saw, and I hope you dig it. So here I am a few years ago. First of all, something always happens just before I go on the air. I smack the hell out of my head just bumping into a wall. Stupid, but it's the kind of things that happen. So I'm lucky I didn't break my glasses or break my nose or something, but I'm working this one with a headache. Could be worse. Otherwise, I'm fine. I heard some other people on a podcast talking about reading and the importance of it and whether or not it is important. I wanted to talk about it. I have a lot of experience as a reader. I was always a good reader, so I thought I would relay some of the things in my life where it's saved my butt to read. But before that, I'd like to talk about reading in general. Is it necessary to be a great reader? The answer is no. Just depends on the kind of music you're playing, the kind of work you're doing. Does it make you a great drummer if you're a great reader? No, it sure doesn't. There are plenty of great drummers who can't read. If you're a great drummer, does it mean you're a great reader? No. There are, as I said, just the inverse. But why is it you would want to read? Well, we're going to talk about that. I came up through high school band, First of all, when I was a kid, I got a practice pad and the Goldenberg book and just sort of taught myself how to read through eighth notes and 32nd notes and all that. It's not that difficult for single hand, two-handed reading on one drum. And then I went to high school band, and of course you read like crazy. But I went to University of North Texas, which was called North Texas State University. And back then, they were training people to be professional musicians, which included a lot of reading shows, uh, Vegas type of shows, Broadway type of shows, um, big bands. They were all a lot centered around the old big band format, and they sure did stress big bands there. And so it was really, really emphasized that you could be a good reader. In fact, there's an old lab band album. They still record the 1 o'clock jazz band, their premier ensemble. I mean, make an album every year, I think. But there's an old album from back when Soph was in the band, the 60s, I think. And they're saying, you hear Leon Breeden, the director, saying, the sound you're hearing is the sound of music being passed out. And they're actually passing out a chart and kicking it off and sight reading it live for the album. So it seems like that might have been a little ridiculous, but in my professional experience, it was pretty close to on the mark. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that if we can. Um, Upon getting out of college, I didn't graduate, but I moved on. And I began working at this was the day and age in the mid 70s. They had a lot of dinner theaters around, or small production theaters, or colleges or even high schools who would hire pros to flesh out the band. And generally speaking, the cast might rehearse for a month or longer, but the band would probably have an orchestra rehearsal, then a dress rehearsal with the cast, and then opening night, baby. Sometimes you got the music ahead of times. A lot of times you didn't. So there's a lot of reading. Now, the hard part about reading shows is it's not about, if it says jazz, rock, funk, whatever the groove is, that's fine. But there are a lot of tempo changes. There are a lot of things where you're trying to read while there are retardandos, accelerandos, fermatas, cesoras, and you've got to keep an eye on the conductor at all times. And the hard part is not beat one, mostly with conductors, unless it's a classical conductor you've never seen before. Boom, downbeat. Boom. Where's beat two? So if you're going from here, one, two, da, 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 you're playing along there, da, da, cut off, downbeat, beat two sets the tempo. You have to be in the conductor's mind to find that beat two with him so the tempo is set. I interviewed Harvey Mason on this show, and he was the drummer that did the Academy Awards for 20 something years. And he said he never made a mistake you could hear on television. And was kind of relieved when he no longer was doing it because of that record. But there'd be five shows up for an award, and there'd be little pieces of 5 different pieces of music. And the winner is, and the conductor would give you a downbeat. I said, "Where'd beat two come from?" He said, "Me." Beat two came from him. So you really have to have a sixth sense of where the thing is going that you kind of only gain by experience. But that's not to scare you off. Let's talk about reading in general. A lot of people see notes on a staff and they realize, man, we have 4 limbs and they're all doing something differently. How can I read 4 limbs at the same time live in front of an audience or to a recording? Well, the good news is you generally don't. Sorry, I got knocked in the head. You generally don't. Those are method books usually, where the right hand is doing this and the left hand is doing that, and then we have the right foot doing this and the left foot doing that, and they're meant to be taken slowly and progressively over a long period of time. Rarely do you see a part where 4 limbs are written out, and a lot of times when you do, you just ignore it. So that's the good news. The bad news is what you do see is not what you play, but what the band plays. So you might have the band's going 2, 3, 4, 1, but, do but. Okay, let's say that. But you read that, but you play 2, 3, but da boom, da rap, do but. You're filling in, improvising, setting up the band. So you're really reading what the band is playing and making up your own part. And that's enough to frighten a lot of people. But again, the thing is experience. Experience is what helps. So later on, I mean, I got out of college and was doing shows and this and that, and a chance came for me to audition for the Glenn Miller Band. I was trained to play big bands, and the Glenn Miller Band was what they called a ghost band. One of those bands where the leader died, but the band kept going. And the audition consisted of me, the conductor, the band leader wanted to make sure I could follow a conductor. So he says, I want you to sight read the music and I'm going to conduct. And I might decide to change the tempo. I might decide to make you louder or softer. You got to watch me while you're reading. And that was in other words, the audition was he was purposely trying to screw me up and not just play time. Because a lot of times, big band charts, the leader kicks it off and then gets out of the way. Sometimes it's super hairy. But that's what that was. And then when you went on one of those bands, Ghost Band or the real bands at the time were Woody, Kenton had already, I think he was still around. But Maynard, there were some big bands still around. Of course, the Ellington Band had Duke had passed. Basie was still around at the time. But when you went on any of those bands, not so much the Basie Band, but when you went on any of those bands, there weren't rehearsals, man. You didn't go out there a week early and, you showed up and read. You read the gig that night and hopefully you had a chance to look at it before, but generally you should pretty much know the book before you get there. One other thing to point out is the difference between a practice and a rehearsal. High school bands practice. Practicing is where you're learning the parts together, learning what to play and how to play. Rehearsal, pardon me, rehearsals are for learning to fall together as an ensemble. You don't come to rehearsal without knowing how to play your part. So reading, though, kind of combines the whole thing. You're flying by the seat of your pants. Now, you can make the argument you only really read something once, right? Sight reading. But if you're reading a 2-hour show, even though you've read it once, there's still a lot to read. So back to my experience. I did the audition with the Miller Band, and I did that band. And that band was kind of a show sort of band in that it was never really a jazz band where you just kicked it off and left it there. The leader conducted a lot, and it had to change a lot. So you go with the flow. When I moved to Los Angeles, I got hooked up with this band. Mark Masters had something called the Jazz Composers Orchestra, and it was the closest. Stan Kenton had died by that point, and that was one of my goals, was to get with Stan from knowing Peter Erskine years before and loving that band. And he had all the music from the Kenton Library. He had the music stands from the road. He had all of that, and there were a lot of alumni on the band. So I loved it because it was the closest thing I thought I would ever get to playing with the Kenton Band, and to this day it was. It was a 2-story walk-up in a bad neighborhood with this funky-ass rehearsal hall, but great players, and you'd get the music, and it would say Shelley on it, from Shelley Mann, one of my idols. And it was just very cool. But we read. Let's touch on that for a second. There used to be, to some cities, there still are, the existence of reading bands. When you were called upon to do the kind of work that required a lot of reading, those guys would look for getting together with other players to sight read big band charts and play them maybe for free, just to keep your reading up because you couldn't make those kind of mistakes in the studio. So this was a reading band, so to speak, and you'd find some great players on these reading bands. So the whole time I lived in LA, occasionally I'd do, theater gigs. I did the Ventura County Opera Association or something like that. It was a Cole Porter thing. San Francisco Mime Troupe, which wasn't mime, it was a musical. A lot of different theater events. Then there'd be some session stuff, not a lot. The big boys were doing the great dates, but you get one every now and then where there'd be some reading. And generally speaking, you're very comfortable with reading. Sometimes it's like the studio guys say, 95% boredom, 5% terror. Sometimes you get some shit that's just impossible to read. But there are guys out there who use the expression, you might have heard the expression, cat can read fly shit. Well, if you can imagine a fly flying over a piece of music and dropping, that's kind of what they mean. Hairy stuff. Generally, it's not that. So I say if you're a lot of people are intimidated about learning to read. Just jump in and learn it, man. It's a language. You read English. It's not that hard. You just have to work at it, and experience will cover the rest of it. You got to get experience somewhere. Moving through my career, I went to take a teaching gig at a university in Canada, St. Francis Xavier in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, keeping the chair warm for my buddy Terry O'Mahony while he finished his master's degree. We were pals from studying with Jeff Hamilton out in Los Angeles. And suffice it, you have to be a good reader if you're going to teach at the university level. So, but reading kept me in good shape there. When I moved to Atlanta, I got involved with the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain, with flagship hotel for the whole chain was in Atlanta, and it was like a musical, like working as a court musician for in a castle or something. There was lots of music going on, and one of two things I did for them. I did a lot of things, but one of them was a big band, full blown big band. Well, three. One was a horn band, like a top 40 cover band that had charts, 10-piece band and some singers. And another was every now and then, like 4th of July or something, it'd be an orchestral gig with drum set. So there was a lot of reading that went on there. And I was finding it. It didn't bother me. I remember the first gig I did with that big band, we were at a mall or something, and there was, I'm sight reading. I never played with them before. The music is over there, I should say. And there are dancers. There's a big drum solo where I have to cue back in dancers before the band comes in from the conductor. There was a CNN camera walking around. So I'm trying to watch the conductor, make sure I'm straight with the dancers, read the part, and not get bugged by a camera in my face. You see what happens? If you're a good reader, at least you don't have to worry about that. All right, so maybe I'll make a mistake, I'll cover it, but generally speaking, I'm not worried about that part of it. Just by being a good reader, that can save your ass. Okay. Another time I was asked to sub at the Atlanta Lyric Opera, whatever it is, at the First Theater in Georgia Tech campus. A friend of mine was playing the gig, and he said, "Hey, man, I need your help. I can't make the dress rehearsal and opening night. I'm not sure I can make it on time, but I can be there probably by, right after downbeat. You might want to, can you just learn the overture and sub for me?" And I'm like, well, if you know what the overture is, it's the part they play before the show that includes excerpts from the entire show. And West Side Story is tough. It's not an easy show. There's a lot of crazy time signatures, and the overture has all of it in it. So I said, okay, man, all right. So I look through sends me the music, and I look at the overture, and it's tough, but I think I got it. And I show up, dress rehearsal. I'm in the pit, and my friends, what are you doing here, man? What happened to Butch Severs, good drummer in Atlanta? I said, well, he'll be here soon, I hope. And sure enough, before the thing started, he shows up. Off the hook, don't have to read, don't do anything that night. I sat there and watched the show. Next night, opening night. We're all in the pit. Whoops, sorry to bump the mic. The lights come down. Conductor comes on. The light comes on him. He turns to the orchestra, and we're about to start playing the overture for West Side Story. I haven't played a single note with these people, and in walks Butch. Butch takes a stick, sits down, and makes the opening. So, being a good reader is the only thing that allowed me to say, okay, I can do this. But that's kind of how it goes. Sometimes it's trial by fire, and reading will save your ass. I'll tell you another anecdote. There was the Alliance Theater, which is one of the premier theaters in the Southeast, was producing a show called Jelly's Last Jam about Jelly Roll Morton with a small big band that was on stage, actually. And there was a drummer in town doing it, very good drummer, but he wasn't getting along with the music director. Got rid of him very suddenly, called my buddy Scott von Ravensburg. Well, Scott was in town, and he went and did the gig, and they loved him. He did a great job. And they said, okay, we need you to do the whole show. Well, he happened to be home on a break from a riverboat. He had a riverboat gig that was all year long, and they would be on and off for periods of time. And as soon as they give him the gig, he gets the call to go back to the boat. Well, he's got good bread, steady employment, health insurance. He's got to go. So now they're on their third drummer. And they called me up, and the music director says, well, I got an hour. We can rehearse at the theater tomorrow afternoon before we open. Okay, so in this case, I didn't have the music. I got together with the conductor, him and I played piano for an hour. The hell, the show's longer than an hour. And that's what we had, man. That was the rehearsal, and I had to read through the whole thing and play the gig. Got through it. Didn't bother me. It was all right because I knew I could read. I worked, I'll get to the end of this. I worked for a whole bunch of things. Atlanta Pops, Orchestra, no rehearsal for that. Just show up and read the thing. Larry Elgart was a big band leader in Florida, came up and did some gigs up around here in Atlanta, hired me for that. No rehearsal. You just have to read. Okay, now you can argue that there are great drummers who don't read at all, and you're right. I don't think Tommy Lee's ever been asked to read anything. I don't think Ringo Starr or Charlie Watts or all kinds of my favorite drummers out there can read. That's okay. It's only something you need if you're working in the genres that require it. And you might argue that those are less and less these days. But if you want to do that, if you want to be able to do that kind of work, session work, if there is such a thing anymore, theaters, shows, big bands, all kinds of things where you would be required to read, it's going to help you make a lot of money, a lot more money. None of us make a lot of money being able to read. So you need to figure out if that's something you feel should be in your arsenal. And if it is, get on it, man. It's not that hard.
Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Bobby A, and today I wanted to tell you about how much I really love the Hudson Music digital app. Okay, now, check it out. It's an app that you can get for your device, and you can purchase books from the Hudson Music digital store and have them stored right on your device. The great thing about it is you always have it with you, and any content that might be video related or music related is right there at your fingertips. It's a wonderful resource.
All right. There's my take on reading. I love the Hudson Music thing, by the way. The app, I use it in teaching all the time. Now, one caveat, my friend Michael Berkowitz saw when I was talking about this Harvey Mason story and following a conductor. He's a wonderful conductor as well as a drummer. And he pointed out that it's not always just, here's one, and you're up to your devices to find two. A good conductor will give you the tempo with the upbeat. One. So there's 4, 1, 2, or 4, 1, 2. There's still some wiggle room in there where you have to have that simpatico, but it's not as completely out of the blue as maybe we made it seem in that discussion. 4, 1, not 1. Though I have worked in some conducting situations where it wasn't very clear. Okay, that's my show on reading. It's been an easy show for me because most of it was pre-recorded, but we do present it as live, and most people watch it in post. So we get, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 hits on it. You can see it on Facebook. You can see it on YouTube, a bunch of Facebook pages. YouTube, they always go there at the Drummer Nation channel. And then a bunch of podcasts, like 15 different podcatchers. You know what they are if you're doing podcasts. You can get it in audio, you can get it in video. So, you know, we do what we can with this, and we appreciate your participation. And that'll be it, I think, for this show. And I'll see you again on the flip side if I can put these things in order to get out of here cleanly. I think I can. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next time on Drummer Nation Live. Take care.